Hello, my name is Nick. I'm a medical student. I wanted to talk really quickly about my experiences with medical school so far and with Step 1, which is the first medical licensing exam test that medical students take. It kind of splits the preclinical years from the clinical years. So all the basic sciences, you take the test, and then you can go into the clinic. I want to talk about that because I actually just took that test 2 days ago, and I'm feeling really confident. Now, if I delete this video in 2 weeks, know that my confidence was misplaced and I actually failed. But right now I'm feeling good. So I'll start with just a very brief background about myself. I am an Army veteran. I basically joined the Army essentially out of high school. And so there was quite a gap between high school and starting medical school. And in that gap, I really didn't do college. I do have a diploma, but it is from a bunch of military credits. I really had not been in the classroom until I started medical school, and so for the MCAT I took 3 months and I studied and basically self-taught, and then took the test, ended up passing that and getting into medical school at West Virginia University, which does actively recruit a lot of veterans, which is pretty cool and probably why I'm in medical school right now, not still working through a real undergrad. But anyway, the point being, I did not have a lot of experience when I started medical school with studying, which I think might have actually helped me, because I know that I'm very different now than I was in high school, and so it would make sense then that my study methods probably changed as well. So I really spent the first block of medical school, which was biochemistry, figuring out how I learn best. And it was really interesting. I found that a lot of the resources that most people use, things like OnKey, which is a flashcard app, really did not work that well for me. The thing about flashcards is they kind of give you very discrete pieces of information. And I found that I'm a very spatial learner, and a learner who, if I can visualize how things fit together, then I can logic my way to the answer. If I'm asked to repeat something that I have been told, I'm a lot worse at that. So I ended up, before medical school, getting an iPad and getting an app on there called Notability, where it's basically just a note-taking app. You can write on it, you can draw on it, you can make boxes, you can draw lines between things, and that's exactly what I did. I used that. I used Sketchy, which is kind of like a cartoon website. You pay some money and then you get access to these videos, and each one's on a separate medical topic, and every symbol, every little character in the video, everything basically means something. So for example, if you see someone holding a purple pencil, that would mean that the treatment for this thing is penicillin. Okay. So I know that the Sketchy Micro and Sketchy Farm are both really popular. I actually used it for pathology as well and found that very useful, just because it gave me a backdrop upon which I could that I could tie back to when I was taking tests. And also I found that a lot of the in-house material was a lot more in-depth than the actual USMLE subject tests, which kind of makes sense. I mean, professors do their dissertation in such and such topic, and then they find it very hard to not go very in-depth into that topic. I don't blame them. But just know that, at least in my case, a lot of the in-house notes, when I went back and tried to study for Step 1, ended up not being that useful because they were just too in-depth. Step 1 really is a mile wide and an inch deep, if that, maybe a half inch. So I ended up just starting from square one and just screenshotting all these sketches all over again and really not adding too much to them. What I would do though, actually, is I would draw lines. You'll find that in Sketchy, especially Sketchy Path and Sketchy Farm, different subjects, different kind of subsets of an overarching subject. So for example, think benzodiazepines, different benzos will be in different areas depending on if they're long acting, short acting. So I would draw little lines between them, and I would actually write in short acting, long acting. But for the most part, Sketchy does a very good job of already spatially orienting the pictures so that you can think back to where something is in a picture, and that'll be a clue. Something else is I would listen to lectures or watch videos well, not really watch videos, listen to videos as I was going for runs or as I was biking. And I found that really useful too, in sort of a similar sense, where when I was then sitting down for the test, I would think back to where I was on the trail when I heard such and such thing, and then I could take kind of remember taking a few more steps and what was the person saying then, take a few more steps, what were they saying then, oh, that's the answer. So if I had to memorize something, that would be basically the only way that I found that I was able to do it, is if it was somehow spatially oriented. Now from that, like I said in the beginning, I really didn't memorize a whole lot. It was a lot of certain facts, certain overarching ideas, and then I would try to logic my way to answers as I took practice questions. And for the most part, the logic held. If it didn't hold because there was some exception to, like, logically this would make sense, but in this particular case it doesn't, then I would try to commit that to memory specifically. But to be honest with you, those kinds of subjects were ones that I would tend to do poorly on regardless further on. So anyway, so it was a lot of deriving rather than memorizing is how I found that I learned best. Now with that, so Anki again was not a great resource for me. First Aid again was not a super great resource. Both of those it ended up being because I would end up just getting bored and kind of tuning out, and I really wouldn't mean to. But with Anki, I'd be flipping through cards, and yeah, it's just a discrete piece of information, so that wasn't great. And furthermore, 5, 20, 50 cards in, I would find myself not really thinking about them, just kind of clicking through them. So that wasn't great. First Aid, same thing. It's a textbook. If you knew everything that's in First Aid, I'm sure you'd do great on STEP. But I just could not sit down and get through it, because I'd start reading, and I'd pretty soon just be droning and be 5 pages in and be like, man, I don't think I retained anything. Now with that too, maybe I'm a slow reader, I don't know, but I don't think that for me reading is the most efficient way to get information. I think videos probably are, just because they seem a lot faster. It just seems like it comes at you quite a bit faster. Which leads into another point, not just about prepping for tests or anything, STEP included, but medical school in general, and that's just that time's limited. So really taking time to figure out how you study the most efficiently, I think is pretty helpful. Now my wife and I had our first kid the first year of medical school. He just turned 1, so that was about a year ago. And obviously that takes a lot of time away, because when he's home and when my wife's home, I don't want to be studying. And so that meant that necessarily I would have to kind of cram my studying into basically the hours of 8 to 4 p.m. and on weekdays, because weekends I didn't really want to study, and I found it very difficult to study when I tried. So efficiency was key. Now, I've talked about some things that didn't work that great for me. Some things that did work really well. I talked about Sketchy already. UWorld was huge for me. UWorld is basically just a bunch of questions, practice questions, and especially for STEP, it ended up feeling like it was less about learning the material and more. It's like 3,600 questions. So by the end of the question bank, I felt like I was studying testology more than I was studying medical physiology or pharmacology or anything like that, because it would be more of reading the question, what do I think the test writer is trying to get at, ruling out answers, and then from there using my knowledge to pick between the better of 2 answers for the most part. And you really can't get that sort of work that kind of muscle, that kind of brain muscle, without actually doing practice questions. So plus I read before starting to really study for STEP that completion of the entire UWorld test question bank was like the biggest predictor of doing well on STEP. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just do that. And I really do think that helped quite a bit. So, Sketchy, UWorld, those are two really good resources. For anatomy, I got an app on the iPad. I guess the iPad itself is a huge resource. I don't really know how I would have learned if I didn't have that, so that I had something interactive to kind of mess with. And that ties into the anatomy app too, where a big part of how I learned anatomy was through this app, where you could cut away different body parts and really see how they all fit together. Not real body parts, virtual, body parts from this app. But you could cut them away, see how they all fit together, and then there was a little encyclopedia section beside that would tell you the blood supply, innervation, and the function. And with that too, I think that there was also a button that would highlight the blood supply and innervation, so that was huge. That really helped a lot. Again, kind of being more visual and spatial, it was nice to see those actual structures running into the muscle or the pancreas or whatever you're looking at. So I'd say those 3 resources plus the iPad were my biggest go-to things. And I don't want this video to go too long. I don't have any script or anything, so I'm just kind of spitballing it here. So I don't want to start rambling. So those are the resources I used, the resources I didn't use, how I ended up settling on what I used, and the time efficiency thing. I think that's huge. With that limited time, I also, part of it was I found that if I tried to push a whole lot longer than 8 hours, really 4 to 6 hours of studying each day, which sounds incredibly short, that much time of just dedicated, like actually being locked in, is pretty exhausting. So at a certain point, usually in the afternoon, I would go for a run, work out, and then I might have mentioned this, but I also tried to go to the range once a week or once every 2 weeks. Because no matter what, you're never going to be a medical student first. I don't think it would be healthy to be. Maybe medical student second, but if you're married and if you have kids, I think medical student probably is like 4th or 5th behind human first, husband, father, and medical student in there. So I think that no matter what you do, kind of be true to yourself, I guess, is the biggest theme here. Man, this is turning into like a big movie moment. Just be true to yourself, remember that you are a human. There is more knowledge that you're responsible for knowing than I think that most people are able to learn on step, but that doesn't mean you can't do well. It means just practice, use your time efficiently. When you're studying, be studying. Don't have anything going on to distract you, at least in my case. And then when you're not studying, leave that behind and do something fun. And remember that you have other responsibilities too. I think that wraps it up. No matter what, if you're a med student, if you're thinking about med school, know that you can do it. If I can do it, I think most people can do it. Just find what works best for you. Don't get discouraged. You got this. Yeah. Alrighty, I'll catch you next time. Bye.